Alright folks, let's talk about Richard Kuklinski, aka the Iceman. This man is one of the most notorious and chilling figures in the world of crime. This guy was a stone-cold killer, allegedly taking out over 100 people. His methods were as varied as they were brutal, leaving a trail of fear and death in his wake. We're talking mob hits, random acts of violence, you name it. Kuklinski was versatile in his killing, working for the mob and also committing murders for personal reasons. Kuklinski was the real deal, operating for decades before getting caught. His ability to evade law enforcement for so long is a testament to his cunning and ruthlessness. He was like the Terminator of the mob world, except instead of robots, he was taking out actual human beings. His efficiency and cold-blooded nature made him a valuable asset to organized crime. What's even crazier is that he managed to keep this double life hidden for years. He was living a seemingly normal life, blending into society while committing heinous acts. He was a family man, for crying out loud. He had a wife and kids who had no idea about his dark side. Imagine the shock they must have felt when his true identity was revealed. This guy is a walking, talking paradox, and we're gonna dive deep into his story. How did he manage to lead such a double life? What drove him to kill so many people? This is the face of a man who could kill you without a second thought. His cold, calculating eyes reveal nothing but a void where empathy should be. No remorse, no hesitation, just pure, cold-blooded execution. Kuklinski's lack of emotion made him one of the most dangerous killers in history. He was like a shark in the water, always circling, always looking for his next victim. His predatory nature was relentless, and he thrived on the hunt. And the worst part is, he seemed to enjoy it. The thrill of the kill, the power it gave him, was something he relished. The guy was a straight-up psychopath. His lack of conscience and his ability to compartmentalize his life made him a uniquely terrifying figure in the annals of crime. So how does a guy go from zero to ice-cold killer? It's a question that haunts the dark corners of our minds. Well, Kuklinski's story is a wild ride, man. Born into a rough neighborhood, he was exposed to violence and crime from a young age. He started out small-time, stealing, getting into fights, typical Jersey stuff. But then, things escalated. He wasn't just a petty thief, he had a knack for brutality. He started working for the Gambino crime family, one of the most notorious mafia outfits in history. They saw potential in his ruthlessness. These guys were the real deal, involved in everything from gambling and loan sharking to drug trafficking and murder. They needed someone who could handle the dirtiest of jobs. And Kuklinski? He became their go-to hitman. He was efficient, cold, and utterly remorseless. This was back in the 60s and 70s, a time when the mob ruled the streets. It was an era of lawlessness, where power was taken, not given. They needed someone to do their dirty work, and Kuklinski was more than happy to oblige. He thrived in the shadows, where morality was a foreign concept. He was like their own personal Grim Reaper, taking out anyone who dared to cross them. His methods were as varied as they were gruesome. And he didn't just kill them, man. He made sure they suffered. His reputation for cruelty was legendary. He got creative with it. From cyanide poisoning to brutal beatings, Kuklinski's methods were a dark art form. He was a master of his grim craft, leaving a trail of terror in his wake. This is where things get really messed up. Kuklinski wasn't just some thug with a gun. This guy was meticulous, calculated. He had a whole arsenal of methods for disposing of bodies. Cyanide injections, dismemberment, you name it. He even experimented with freezing his victims to throw off the cops on the time of death. That's how he got the nickname, the Iceman. Imagine, man, you're walking down the street, minding your own business, and bam! You're on Kuklinski's hit list. Next thing you know, you're frozen solid, stuffed in a barrel, and left to rot in some back alley. This guy was a one-man killing machine, and he seemed to take a twisted pleasure in the details. Kuklinski's stomping grounds were mainly New Jersey and New York, but his reign of terror extended far beyond those borders. He was like a phantom, moving silently through the shadows, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. No one was safe, not even his own associates. He once killed a guy just for complaining about a parking spot. Meanwhile, this guy is going home to his wife and kids like nothing happened. Can you imagine sitting down to dinner with this dude after he spent his day freezing people and feeding them to rats? The guy was living a double life, man, and he played the part of the family man perfectly. Section 5. The Family Man. Facade. Living a double life. This is where things get really intriguing. This is the part that gets me, folks. How can someone live such a contradictory existence? How do you reconcile the image of a loving husband and father with that of a ruthless killer? It's almost like living in two parallel universes. Kuklinski managed to keep these two worlds completely separate. He was meticulous in his deception. His family had no idea about his dark side. They were completely in the dark, believing he was just a regular guy. They thought he was a successful businessman. He played the role so well that no one suspected a thing. He even took his kids on vacation while he had bodies stashed in his hotel room. It's mind-blowing, right? Imagine the audacity and the nerve it takes to pull that off. This guy was a master manipulator, able to compartmentalize his life in a way that most people couldn't even fathom. He had an uncanny ability to switch roles seamlessly. He was like a chameleon, blending in, adapting to his surroundings. One moment he was a devoted family man, the next, a cold-blooded killer. He could be charming one minute and utterly ruthless the next. The duality of his nature is both fascinating and terrifying. It's enough to give you chills, man. The sheer complexity of living such a double life is beyond comprehension. Section 6. Undercover Operation and the Fall of the Iceman. All good things must come to an end, even for cold-blooded killers like Richard Kuklinski. After years of getting away with murder, the feds finally caught up with him in 1986. They set up an elaborate sting operation, using an undercover agent posing as a hitman. Kuklinski, always eager to prove himself, fell for it hook, line, and sinker. They got him on tape talking about his methods, his victims, everything. It was like something out of a movie, except this was all too real. The Iceman had finally met his match. Confessions of a Killer. Kuklinski's chilling interviews. Once he was in custody, Kuklinski did something unexpected. He started talking. He gave a series of chilling interviews, detailing his crimes with a disturbing lack of remorse. He claimed to have killed over 100 people, although the exact number is still debated. He described his methods in gruesome detail, seemingly relishing in the shock and horror he elicited. These interviews gave the world a glimpse into the mind of a psychopath. Kuklinski showed no empathy for his victims, no guilt for his actions. He was a predator, pure and simple, and he seemed to take a perverse pride in his work. Justice served. The Iceman's imprisonment and death. Kuklinski was convicted on multiple counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison. He died behind bars in 2006, taking many of his secrets to the grave. Some people believe he deserved a harsher punishment, while others argue that he was already living in his own personal hell. Regardless of where you stand on the issue of capital punishment, one thing is certain. Richard Kuklinski was a monster who terrorized innocent people for decades. His crimes were heinous, his lack of remorse chilling. He may be gone, but his legacy of fear and intrigue lives on. The enduring fascination with a killer, Kuklinski's legacy. The Iceman's story continues to captivate people all over the world. Books, documentaries, even a feature film have been made about his life and crimes. Why are we so drawn to stories like this? Is it the thrill of the unknown, the desire to understand the darkness that lurks within the human heart? Perhaps it's the stark contrast between Kuklinski's outward normalcy and his inner depravity that fascinates us. He was a walking contradiction, a family man who was also a ruthless killer. His story forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that monsters can hide in plain sight. Beyond the shadows of silence. Lessons learned from the Iceman's life. Richard Kuklinski's story is a chilling reminder that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of judging a book by its cover and the importance of trusting our instincts. While Kuklinski's reign of terror has ended, His legacy serves as a reminder to be vigilant, to be aware of the world around us, and to never underestimate the capacity for darkness that exists within the human heart. And that's the truth, folks. Sometimes the scariest monsters aren't the ones we see in horror movies. They're the ones who walk among us, hidden in